This is our last Climate Lit event for the year, and it is called So You Want to Write for Climate Lit? Thank you for being here and for watching. My name is Nick Kleese. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at the Center for Climate Literacy at the University of Minnesota. I'm also an editor at Climate Lit. I'm hosting this webinar from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, which is situated on the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of Dakota peoples. We understand our work towards climate literacy to be an issue of educational, racial, social, and climate justice, in that we recognize colonial legacies while striving for equitable relations in the present in order to secure a sustainable tomorrow. I'm honored to be here in community with you today. For context, Climate Lit is the flagship initiative of the Center for Climate Literacy at the University of Minnesota. Climate Lit believes that climate literacy includes understandings of both Earth systems and story systems, and that an engagement with both is vital to develop ecological values. We focus on stories, and particularly stories for young people, because these offer readers formative and transformative experiences that become the foundation for an ecocentric life. Our mission is to provide educators with the resources they need to implement climate literacy education in their classrooms, which includes collaborating with our fellow Earthlings to generate this material, hence this workshop and this orientation to our work. We're grateful that you're here, and we hope to offer you enough information in this session that you feel comfortable, confident, and capable of getting started. In the next 20 minutes or so, you'll hear about several types of content that you can contribute. I want to note too, again, that this is being recorded, but only the active speaker will be visible on the screen. So if you'd rather not be shown, you can keep your camera turned off, and we will end recording at the end of the Q&A session. Okay, without further ado, we're going to dive into our first section. This is writing curriculum for the classroom with Doctors Steph Rollag Yoon and Jana Bello Miller. Steph and Jana, take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Nick. One of the works that Nick was situating the climate lit work was around communities, and in thinking about the ways that different communities are collecting and sharing stories. And so Stephanie and I wanted to spend a little bit of time looking at the ways that our educator communities, and specifically our K-12 educators, might think about the work that they're already doing with youth in schools or out of school contexts as purposeful and important for writing curriculum for climate lit. So the focus of thinking about climate lit curriculum is, again, really thinking about how the work that we're doing with our students, interdisciplinary and across curriculums, are building our community of teachers by connecting our themes from math, literacy, social studies around climate literacy, and really highlighting and honoring the teacher perspectives and experiences that we're having in classrooms. And so this space to be able to write and think about curriculum is an opportunity to network and to connect all of us. As we know, so often K-12 teaching can feel like a silo, and the way to expand this network is to be able to share resources. And so both with the Climate Lit website, as well as with the journal, where we'll have more opportunities to hear about different ways to share specific curriculum, we're really interested in looking at lesson plans, units, and particularly the reflective stories about how climate literacy is being taken up in your classroom.
All right, thank you, Jana. And thanks everybody for being here. We're really excited, and we have been excited to hear from some teachers already. And right now we want to take just a few moments to talk to you about some of the formatting that we've designed together as a collective group of editors that might be usable for both teachers to share with each other, and also a frame for thinking about the expansive work that teachers are already doing. So, as Jana mentioned, one of the ways that teachers can contribute is by writing a piece for the new Climate Literacy Journal. And we'll have our first issue coming out soon. We're really excited. And as we were thinking about this, we wanted to make sure that we honor all the ways that educators write curriculum and reflect on it, while also providing a frame that can be easy for teachers to grab information from, and also a way to start thinking about how to share. So we're asking teachers to follow this format on your screen under example format, where we're asking teachers to consider giving an overview of how they're thinking about climate literacy, as well as a narrative framework for how they came to this work, what it means in their context. And then this chart that you see where it says curriculum at a glance, we invite teachers to fill out so that it's really accessible for other educators and has the information kind of boiled down. So the unit title, the theme, the grade levels it might be appropriate for, core text, supporting texts, climate literacy terms, which I think we'll hear more about in a little bit, objectives, and then any curriculum materials. And the idea is this can all be linked to other resources as well, so that people can easily grab those resources as they are often expansive. And then an opportunity for teachers to write what they think they'd be doing going forward. So again, this is the format that we're offering, but also welcome people to write in a way that works best for them. We want to give that flexibility. And then if you want to go to the next slide, Nick. So right now, soon we'll have a more formal process for people to submit, but for now you can email me if you're interested in being an official writer. My email's here, and I'm happy to help you out from there. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephanie and Jana. And folks who are here today, you can ask Steph and Jana questions at the end of these presentations, but we've got 3 more types of content before then. Grace is going to give us some knowledge about how you can write glossary entries for Climate Lit. Grace, take it away.
Hi, everybody. As it's been said, I'm so glad that you are all here. I think it's really exciting when we can all find time to get together and just further this mission for climate literacy and what it means for our website Climate Lit to function. So I'm going to be talking about glossary terms. The unique thing about our glossary is that it allows us to create this vocabulary that is focused on furthering the ideas around the climate crisis that we find in our database, our literature database on the website, and how we define these terms and then apply them to our current situation in the world is really critical to how we want to send our message. So just a quick example of how to kind of format these glossary terms is, first, of course, you want to describe and then define the term that you're talking about. And then you can connect this term to specific works, either books or movies or an item that we have on our website, and show how that literature item shows that piece of work, and then expand that definition to the context of the world we live in and how we can work even harder and use that term in everyday language to promote the fight against climate change.
Thank you, Grace. And Grace, I do not want to put you on the spot, but I do want to give you a shout out because Grace is our undergraduate assistant who knows more than anybody else on the team about how the back end works. So if you have questions about the logistics and infrastructure of Climate Lit, the site, Grace can speak from experience about how that works. But thank you, Grace. I will talk now a little bit about writing database entries and how we might think about entries as going beyond a mere summary of the text you are looking at. So on Climate Lit, our site, we want to provide educators with all sorts of texts that they could use in their classroom. This could be books, films, games, apps, media that I'm not even aware of or haven't been invented yet. But whatever type of media that you choose to write about, the entry that you submit for it should go beyond the obvious, should go beyond summary to show readers how the text is connecting to climate concepts and any other ideological structures latent in the text itself. So for instance, I want to offer you 2 different ways that we might think about producing a response to a book called The Fate of Fausto by Oliver Jeffers. On the left side of the screen is an example of a plot summary. This is what the story says explicitly on the page. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. Fausto is a character that decides he wants to own everything, so he goes about the world claiming flowers, trees, sheep, lakes, fields, mountains. But then he's stopped by the sea, who refuses to be owned. So he tries his same intimidation tactics, but he drowns. And in the end of the book, all of these Earth elements forget about FOSTA and they go on living as before. So in this plot summary, you could see how it might lend itself to climate literacy, but the plot summary, again, on the left side of the screen, stays at that surface level in that it's describing what is happening on the page itself. What we are looking for at Climate Lit is a more detailed and intricate analysis of what the story means to say. And one way you might go about doing this is by finding one key concept, one key climate concept, perhaps from the list of glossary terms that Grace alluded to earlier, and think about how that plays out in the story and how the story itself speaks to that concept. So for instance, FOSTA's actions illustrate the ideological underpinnings of the Anthropocene, like a human supremacy complex, anthropocentrism, human expansionism, producerism, extractionism, etc. So the rest of the database entry performs this critical analysis of how that concept plays out in the text. And the intention behind all of this is so that when educators take these texts and enter into the classroom, the database entry provides them with easy to grab, ready to go content and understanding that will help guide conversations about that text, again, beyond mere summary. Like curriculum, like glossary entries, we're proposing a structure for your database entries. Part of the intention for this is so that contributors don't need to lift as much cognitively in order to determine their structure, but they can let their cognitive work beyond the content itself. So our database entries include publication information, of course. They begin with a short quote to hook folks. Then there's a summary paragraph. We encourage spoilers so that educators know what's going to happen in the story. They can anticipate it. And then at least one beefy review paragraph where you work with those climate concepts, perform that critical analysis. If a second review paragraph is required, go for it. And if a story is complex enough to include several concepts, several climate concepts, you can address more than one. But we appreciate focus on one or two key concepts. Once you've addressed those items, you can offer resources to extend student learning beyond the text itself, the topics that it deals with so that it can be searchable in our database, and a few images to give folks a sense of what the book looks like literally on the shelf or the film looks like in your Netflix queue. A couple other notes just to consider as you're thinking about what you might want to write about. It's incredibly helpful to look at the database entries that have already been published on our site for models and examples. We're still working on the formulas for how to best bring them into the world, but you can use these as a benchmark to aim toward. We're also considering how we might incorporate text in languages other than English. And we're encouraging folks to submit things in languages other than English, and we will actively find ways to review them and find folks who can do that translation work, even if we ourselves, thinking about me in particular as a monolinguist, don't speak that language. And last, these entries are meant to be for teachers and educator practitioners. So they need to be practical and immediately relevant for the classroom. Grabbable off the website, you can plug it into a lesson or a unit, and doesn't force the educator to like wade through a bunch of, I guess what my students would call fluff. So if you keep that in mind, look to our site for examples, then you're well on your way to writing your first database entry. And our final type of content that we'll talk about before we open it up to Q&A and discussion is an overview of our journal, our scholarly journal, Climate Literacy and Education, a pocket journal for practitioners. This will be led by Doctors Alex Panos and Lorraine Kerslake. So Alex and Lorraine, take it away.
Thanks, Nick. So we're really excited about this journal. Thank you, Stephanie and Jana, for already talking about one of the kinds of entries that and submission types that we can work in with this journal. But we want to start with just reiterating that, like everything that Climate Lit does, this is for practitioners. And so we're really focused on submissions that meet the needs of the wonderful folks in K-12 who are bringing climate literacy to their classrooms. So all of these types of submissions are with practitioner audiences in mind. We also want to say that this is a starting place. We're a new journal. And so if you have an idea for something that doesn't quite fit what we're saying here, and you don't know quite where it would go, you should still send it because you might invent a whole new submission type that we haven't thought of yet. And we want to be responsive to the things people need. And so we're going to talk about our the general guidelines and then submission specific guidelines for 4 kinds of submissions. Curriculum, Stephanie and Jana, boom, took care of that, same thing. And then we're also going to talk about reflections, critical essays, and then creative or multimodal works that have a home in the journal. And so I think Lorraine's, oh, no, I lied. General guidelines first. So these are just some general guidelines. They will be available on the webpage as well as in a call for proposals that describes these things in more detail. And they're pretty standard for many journals. So things like the font type being a standard font type. We are trying to limit the size of the submissions to under 2,000 words, but each submission type has a bit of a difference in the word length that we're looking for. So these are not long pieces. These are short, snappy, bite-sized ideas for folks. They'll include an abstract, an acknowledgement, any conflict of interest we might need to know about, keywords, and then references following APA. And so I think next, Lorraine's going to talk about reflections and critical essays, and then I'll come back and talk about creative works in just a minute.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex, and thank you also, Nick. And I'd just like to say very quickly that it's a real honor to be sort of part of this brilliant team, and I'm really excited to be working on what I think is a really necessary journal. I think there's a real need for this journal. And basically, just before I go over the 2 types, why is the journal necessary? Well, there's 2 main aims to it, which I think we need to sort of underline again. One is to prioritize the research and the teaching about climate change in relation to children's literature and culture. And the other is because climate literacy and also the action is so necessary in young readers today through literature and the media. So the different parts of the journal, different sections. The section that I'll be taking care of is the section on reflection. And basically, these are kind of opinion pieces, as we've put here, or sort of a type of personal reflection. And that means that we're looking for sort of testimonials or reflections on different types of students' created projects, reviews of methodologies that can be used in the classroom, teaching, or something which is sort of very practical as a form of narrative reflection. The other interesting thing about the reflection articles are their length. They fall sort of, we've put here somewhere between the 500 to 1,200 word limit, and this also includes the abstract and the references. So we're not looking for really long articles. And then after the reflection pieces, can you go to the next slide? Thanks, Nick. The critical reflection essays are slightly longer, and these would include sort of a different type of content in the sense that they're including more of a conceptual or a sort of big picture article. So this is more of a regular, we could say, scholarly article. And in the sense also that we're looking for sort of different critiques, dialogues that are related to practice. The articles here would fall somewhere between 900 to 2,000 words. Of course, including abstract references, figures, etc. Again, if you're uncertain which category they belong to, and this has been actually the case with some of the articles that we've been sent for the first issue, send them to us and we'll put them in the right place. So don't worry too much about that to start with. Send them to us and we'll decide. The length is probably a good indication as well. And as I say, the critical reflection is more of a critical, scholarly, regular article, we could say, whereas the reflection is more of an opinion, more of a personal piece. So these would be these types of articles. And then I think Alex is going to explain the next one. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yes, and I think we've covered curriculum, but just as a quick reference to the word count, which I know is often something we think about when we're trying to submit something to a journal, is 750 to 1,500 words, and following that lovely format that Steph and Jana talked about. And then the other kind of work that we are really excited to be able to highlight in this digital pocket journal are creative or multimodal works. And so these are submissions that run the gamut of the kinds of things that you as a creative person or your students might want to submit to highlight the kinds of work of climate literacy, the actions of climate literacy, so to speak. And we want to just start by saying that with creative or multimodal works, sort of how Nick was describing, we at the journal are interested not just in sort of appreciation of nature, but more going beyond that to engage with the kinds of concepts, systems, and ethics that Nick was talking about at the beginning that guide the work of climate literacy. So I think that if you have a question about what your creative work is, does it fall under these categories? We would encourage you to err on the side of sending it to us, and we are happy to be in conversation with you about whether you think that's the case. I guess as an example, I'm sharing an example here from a teacher who I work with in Florida, which is where I'm based. And this person created a zine, a collage basically of concepts related to her life as a teacher who's trying to teach climate literacy after her classroom library was taken from her, given recent laws passed in our state. And so she's wondering here about that. And she created something that's not a reflection piece, not a scholarly piece, it's creative and multimodal. And this would fit for us. These, we still also want to keep them bite-sized. So we think around 3 pages, like full pages is appropriate, under 1,500 words, around 5 minutes for audio or visual recordings, all of which count for us. But again, this is a very responsive section. So if we could go to the next slide, I can talk more about the kinds of the kinds of submissions we're interested in. So things like creative writing, poetry, short fiction, narrative, the work can be in multiple languages, things like illustration or artwork, comics, posters, illustrations, digital reproduction, zines, collage, video of performance or performed poetry, audio such as sound or narrative or podcasts, clips, all are welcome. And with this, instead of an abstract, we ask for an artist statement or description of about 100 words to help us understand the pedagogical possibilities of what you're sharing with us.